Welcome back to another season of Conversations with Colie podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Miller, and I'm also the author of the book series A through Z Guide to Raising a Good Human, a book series that I wrote to help in the communication process between parents and children and why communication is important. This podcast highlights those deep conversations on subjects we think about, we talk about in passing, but we really don't dive deep. Spend time with us this season and listen to all the inspiring guests and panelists that we are going to have discussing a lot of those deep subjects like learning disabilities, grief, relationships, achieving the impossible, or what seems to be the impossible. I invite you to join us on YouTube all summer long, and then in the fall on Spotify and Amazon Music. And if you haven't already, please check us out on all those listening platforms and check out our website at conversationswithcolie.info. Welcome to episode 1 of season 2 of Conversations with Colie podcast. Today I'm reconnecting with a Necedah School alum. I will tell you that the fact that we are recording this episode feels very nostalgic. Welcome to the show, Brian Decorah, Necedah High School graduating class of...
Oh man, 1991. Thanks for having me on. I didn't know we were going to go there. Wow, 91. That was a long time ago.
I'm 95, so I was like, I know he's older than me a little bit, but I didn't know how. So that was the most tactful way.
That's funny. Yeah, 1991. Proud of it. That was
awesome.
Class to come out of Necedah.
I love it. So I always ask an icebreaker question before we dive into it. Do you have any fears? If so, name one.
I sure do. The only one that really comes to mind, to be honest with you, is a fear of dying alone. You know, I spent a lot of time up in the mountains, and I've had a close call up there. And when it comes to, you know, the feelings and thoughts and emotions, you know, I've done everything to take care of, you know, my son and my ex-wife, his mom, and, you know, everything else in my life is just in place if something horrible were to happen. But just the thought of being there alone scares me a little bit. So that's a good ice-breaking question, a little bit of a deep answer, but hopefully
I love that you went deep with it. Yeah, that's so honest. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to take people through your incredible journey because I read your highlight reel when we emailed, and you have had an incredible life. We come from a small town, for people who probably don't know. At the time of in 91 and 95, what was the population?
773.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. And for my perspective, I thought, oh, I come from a small town. I'm not going to amount to, I'm not going to experience, I'm not going to see all these things. And you have proven that theory completely wrong. So
I've done my best. Yeah. I'm always looking for adventures, and somehow I find them.
Yes. Talk about being a Necedah boy, a Necedah student back then.
Yeah, for sure. So when I think about home, when I think about Necedah, you know, I stay in touch with as many people as I can. And, you know, everyone's busy. It's hard to. But a small town where it's one stoplight, we have one subway, you know, restaurant, you know, so many people talk about they can't wait to leave Necedah. I can't wait to go back when I get a chance to go back, because it just, you know, that feeling and sense of being home where you know every street, you know who lives in pretty much every house. And for us, you know, people talk about, you know, I didn't know everybody in my graduating class. We knew everybody in the entire school, right? We're related to probably a third of them. We've been to the family reunions or Christmases and things like that. But, you know, for me, growing up in Necedah was, it was just a beautiful place because, you know, you're surrounded by nature. We have the National Wildlife Refuge there, which, you know, my dad worked at for 44 years. So there's hunting, there's fishing, you know, we had a small sports community, but we had a successful sports program. So there's a lot of team camaraderie, and just, you know, walking through town and being able to recognize everybody when you go to the Quick Trip, the gas station, and having them recognize you and saying hello is pretty cool thing. I thought my experience growing up was fantastic. I loved Necedah. I still love Necedah.
Yes, I have a lot of amazing memories with a lot of amazing people in Necedah. In growing up in those teenage angst years, though, I had those moments where I was like, I'm never going anywhere. This is a dead
Yeah.
end town. Like you said, I want out. I now want to take my children and walk the streets and say, I did this here with this person. We, did this and all that and to prove it all wrong, most everyone that I am connected to has done something amazing in their life.
There's a lot of good people in Necedah, and it got a lot of good people from Necedah. But yeah, you're right. Just taking your kids back and walk the streets of Necedah. I think every Halloween, what our experience was like, you could go to any house. Where I've lived since then, you can't go to every house. You cannot, and I recommend not going to every house. But back then in Necedah, you could, and I'm sure you still could today.
And we could have homemade treats by Mrs. Strack.
Oh my gosh, there's a trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
Oh man, amazing.
And the soda from Ron from the liquor store. I mean, that was.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Now I want to go. Now I want it to be Halloween. Now I want to go home.
I do love Halloween, and maybe Necedah has something to do with that. So did you go to college?
I did. So I went to college at the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point, and I got kicked out not once, not twice, but 3 times. Had a little bit too much of a good time when I went to school the first time around, and the second time around, I guess you'd say. But later learned that I was going to limit my ability to pursue the career I wanted if I didn't have that piece of paper that was checking a box to say I can finish, a program. So went back to school. Actually went to class. When I went, I sat in the front instead of the back, and finished an undergrad in business, and then went on to get an MBA from the University of Wisconsin in Eau Claire. And being a 3-time strikeout kid that got kicked out of school, ironically, I also taught at one of the universities in Wisconsin. So I went back and did what I had to live the life that I wanted from a career perspective, because in my career, you do need a degree, and it was checking a box and making sure it was done. So I do have a degree, but it took me a while to get there. It took me 7 years.
But you're showing that, yeah, you got kicked out not once, not twice, but 3 times, but you went back, you sat in the front instead of the back, and you applied yourself.
Absolutely. And, a lot of it that I didn't understand when I first went to college is you kind of have to have a relationship with the professor. They kind of have to know who you are, because if you're on that borderline between a C or a B, if they know you and they see your effort, you're going to get a B. But if they don't know who you are and you're just a number on a paper, you're probably going to get a C. And I wish I would have known how important that was. And obviously sitting in the front helps with that versus sitting in the back. And obviously skipping did not help anything. My record proves that.
Yes. Do you think in today's world now, do you think that a college degree is still as important? Because now I'm raising college age kids who are coming to me saying, Mom, that's a waste of money. I can just get a certificate. I can get into a business that doesn't require. Do you still think it's that, like, that's really important to, because I feel like, yes, I did not get the out of high school college experience. I went back at 35.
Yeah.
And I loved college. I loved it.
Yeah. And those professors love us older students because they know we're paying for it, and they know that we're not going to just mess around and go party. We're going to show up to class. We want to learn. Right. So they love it when it's non-traditionals, come back. But to answer your question about how important it is, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. It's not as important for the career that I fell into. My career was in hospitality. I ran casinos for a living. And, the way that there's certain career paths within the industry that you need a degree. Mm-hmm. An accountant, the lawyers, right? There's certain ones where you need them. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the people that were most successful, it wasn't reliant on having a degree. And the example I give, because it's hospitality, is I'd rather hire the person that's got the experience. And how I would equate it to my team is that if you want to go out and build your dream house, you've saved up your whole life, you're going to build a dream house, whether it's in the mountains, on the ocean, wherever, you've got your seed money, and you go out looking for a contractor to build it for you. Are you going to go to the person that's fresh out of college, that has the best degree from the best university? Or are you going to go to Buck, who lives down the street, has been there for 30 years building dream homes for everybody else that never even went to high school? The answer is obvious, right? I mean, you want somebody with that experience. So I think it depends on, the type of career that you're going into. Certificates are all you need in some, things. If you're going to be an electrician, that's another path. And if you're going to be, there's so many great careers out there, because as long as you're happy and challenged in doing what you enjoy doing, that's what matters. It doesn't matter if you've got a degree that supports it, but when you do need a degree, you need a degree. and make sure you do it the right way. And obviously, if you can get it in a shorter amount of time instead of my 7-year program for undergrad degree, that is always recommended. But yeah, it depends on the situation. But my reliance on degrees has reduced and eroded a little bit over time. But there's still value in it. But depending on what your career field is, the importance could be something different.
Yeah. What kept you from giving up when you got kicked out first time, second time, even third time, especially third time? What kept you from giving up and saying, screw it?
Ooh, that's a really good question. No one has ever asked me that question before. I think the first and second time that I went back, it was more about that inner feeling of just feeling I need to do this. But the third time, like when people quit smoking or they give up drugs, sometimes they do it, they're just sick of being sick, right? And for me, I was sick of looking around and seeing everyone that I went to college with their degrees, with their careers, starting families. I thought, I am way behind here. So the third time that I reapplied to get back into school, the university sent me a letter, and they did the first 2 times, but I didn't keep them. The third time I kept it and I put it on the wall, and it was a daily reminder of, don't take this for granted. You may not get a fourth letter. Keep it up until you finish your degree. And I think it was that daily reminder of, this may be your last chance, that motivated me to get it done. And it's, I don't know. Part of it's, you want to make your family proud. You want to be on par with your friends, and so there's all kinds of reasons. But I think that daily reminder that was right above my school desk was enough to keep me focused and going to school, because I do have ADHD, so my mind goes all over, which you're probably hearing in this broadcast. But I needed something to focus on, and that's what focused me to finish it. Do it right the third time. Third time was a charm, for sure.
Hey, they say third time's the charm. I'm all about it. Talk about finding out about your IQ status, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so you would think being kicked out of school 3 times, kicked out of college 3 times, would be an indication of lack of intelligence, or lack of it, something. Clearly something was lacking. Mostly for me, I think it was discipline. Well, it was about 10 years later. My assistant at the time had posted something on Facebook about her daughter having ADHD, and I thought, I need to learn more about this, because I didn't know that I had it. I did the free test on whatever on the internet. You get what you pay for, right? And it just, you have extreme ADHD, your life is over, you're not going to have a career, you can't relate with people. And, oh my
gosh,
go
hang it up and get a beer.
Exactly. Yep. So I went and I checked the second one, same thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was a Sunday. Went and got another one from a more reputable place, whether it was WebMD or something like that, and it said, you are likely on the high spectrum level of ADHD. So booked an appointment, went in and did all the interviews, and they started doing these tests, and the last test lasted 4 hours. Now, 4 hours for somebody that's hyperactive or has ADHD, that is a prison sentence. It was hard to sit there that long. But what I didn't know is that the typical ADHD test is only like an hour and a half, something like that. They incorporated an IQ test. And when I finished, they bring you back a week later, whatever it was, and they said, well, you do have ADHD, and you have a little bit of OCD, but you're coping well and all this stuff. And they said, well, how do you think you did on the IQ part of the test? And then I said, I don't know. I've never taken a test like that before, but it was grueling, and I wanted to get out of there. And they said, well, how do you think you did? And I didn't know, but they started going over the results, and she said, well, I said, well, what's the result? She goes, well, I didn't score it, and I also don't want to have you leaving here feeling like you have to live up to a title or live in a box. So I'm not going to tell you. So I didn't ask any questions. And it was like 5 years later, I was asking one of my team members, one of my executives, because he's probably the smartest guy I've ever known. One of those guys that could either cure cancer or be the end of humanity. He was just that smart.
Yes.
I asked, I said,
the moral compass.
Oh my gosh, you never know, right? I mean, it's one or the other. He's not going to be in the middle. He's going to be one or the other. And he said, well, what's your score? And I said, I don't know. So we agreed to go at that point and get our scores together. And that's when I found out that it's actually in the top 4% of the world. So when you think about people that don't finish a degree, or they get kicked out, or their grades aren't great, it may not be a reflection of intelligence. It may be a lack of commitment or discipline, or the right teaching style, or the right coursework. It could be anything, because if that data is true, that I do have a high IQ and I still got kicked out of college 3 times, it clearly had to be something else. And from my perspective, it was definitely something else. I was more committed to fun than it was to finishing my degree.
Yeah, your focus was just the way it wasn't supposed to be, to that spectrum, the fun spectrum.
Exactly.
And we're from Wisconsin, and we're from Necedah. I feel like we know how to have fun, and like
for sure,
fun.
Absolutely. I mean, we got into cars and drove out into cow fields for fun. We would drive around and shine lights in the woods looking for deer. That's if you can have fun doing that, you can have fun doing anything.
Yeah, or donuts on the ice in the middle of the lake.
Definitely, that's home.
Yeah. So, what's your work life like?
Yeah, sure. So, work life, I started my career in the casino industry. This is when I still didn't have my degree. I was kicked out of school 3 times. I got asked if I wanted to come in and try it out, because at the time I'd won a bronze medal in kickboxing when I was younger and in college, and I was a bouncer to nightclubs. So when I got called to see if I wanted to be a security officer at the first casino that I worked at, I said, sure, that sounds like fun, like crowd control and concerts. Well, I showed up my first day. Little do you know that the average age is 62 and a half. You don't need a kickboxer to get those people and walkers under control. Yeah. So it was definitely a different career type than what I thought it might be. But when I got in, I just loved it. People go to casinos looking to have fun, and there's a lot of great energy there. So I was that guy that worked on the graveyard shift at a little casino in Wisconsin, and just started inching my way up. And when I got an opportunity to learn something new, I took it. I didn't always get paid more. At one point I was working 6 jobs and only getting paid for one of them, because for me, it was an opportunity to learn, because there's not a university that will teach you those skills. So made my way up, and before you knew it, I was a CEO of a casino, and you get recruited by these headhunters around the country. And fortunately, I worked with enough of the best teams in the country that I was offered the best opportunities. And what I found is that if you hire the right people, give them the right tools, tell them you believe in them, support them, and hold them accountable while celebrating their successes, they're going to make you really, really successful. So thankfully, I was really, really successful, and to the point where 3 years ago, I came home to be a dad. I was at a Kobe Bryant's funeral, if you know basketball and Kobe Bryant, and all the speeches were not about him as a basketball player. We all know what kind of basketball player he was, but what kind of a man he was, what kind of a father he was, and how committed he was to making sure his kids were set up. And
he was an example. Honestly.
He was an example, and you always hear the stories about people on their deathbed. None of them say, I wish I had more money, or I wish I had a better title. He said, I wish I would have spent more time with family, especially kids when they were little. So at the time, my son was 11, and I was living in Seattle. He was in Seattle, but I was commuting back and forth to San Diego. And obviously, tough questions, don't always wait until the weekend when you're home. And he's wouldn't always be comfortable sharing things over, FaceTime or, whatever. So made the decision to go home by his birthday, which is in the summertime. We just celebrated it a couple days ago, and I was home, and I haven't regretted that decision for a single second since then. That was a little over 3 years ago. So that's my career path, and that's where my career is now. Someday I may go back. I still get a lot of calls from recruiters asking if I'm interested in, running some pretty cool casinos. But at this point, it's all about my son. We get to spend those quiet times at home, whether it's playing basketball outside or just watching him pet his dog and play with his dog. Those are the moments you don't get back. So that is my career now, watching my son grow and trying to teaching him how to be a good man.
I love that. And you have gone on an adventurous path from what I can see from Facebook. But before we get into how adventurous you are, let's talk about some of the invitations you received in your, I'm assuming from your job.
Yeah. So
really incredible things.
Yeah. So for a kid from Necedah to have been able to do any of those fun things, because, we all have our highlight reels. We all go through things privately that people don't know about. So, in sharing that, I want to make sure my life has not always been roses and butterflies. I've skinned my knees and I've made mistakes, and I still make mistakes, but the highlight reel is kind of fun. So some of the cool things, it depends on the world that you're in, but like having gone to a Super Bowl with one of the NFL teams, traveling with those pro sports teams, throwing out a first pitch at a Major League Baseball game, that was really cool.
Did you bounce it?
No, I practiced for probably a week straight, and my arm was legit sore after that. But I played baseball in high school, and I threw a solid strike, and even when the ball hit the mitt, it had a nice whack to it. The catcher kind of shook his hand. He was playing along with me a little bit, but the promo team was there, and they said, "Wow, that was actually really good." So I've got a video somewhere, but I didn't bounce it. I do have friends that have bounced it, but I did not bounce it, thankfully. I wouldn't. The boys wouldn't let me live that one down if I did that. But yeah, lots of cool invitations. I mean, if you're in the military, I mean, I've gone shooting guns at the range with guys from SEAL Team 6. I've shot with the FBI SWAT team. Just extraordinary,
amazing
opportunities. Yeah, that I kind of have to pinch myself and say, I can't believe this is my life, because I'm just an ordinary guy from a little town in Wisconsin. How does this happen?
And you're leading this extraordinary life. Extraordinary. So I've just been watching recently some of the excursions you've been going on. What got you into mountain climbing? Because that in itself is, to me, it's insane, but I have a terrifying fear of heights. I've never climbed Pete and Well Rock. Never.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Too many horror stories.
For sure. I have a cousin that fell off Pete and Well Rock. It was horrible. We all know people that have fallen.
Yeah.
Right. So I've always been an outdoor person. My dad, worked at the wildlife refuge. So I spent a lot of time outside fishing, hunting, sports, whatever. And when I moved to Washington about 5 years ago, I saw pictures of friends that had gone out in the mountains. I'm like, I can't, what a badass, to me, they're just climbing up the side of a mountain. Well, first time I went, I didn't realize there's actually trails that you can follow to get to the top. So it's not like they're just going out and mountaineering, that they're following trails. But when I first started, obviously I started on the small mountains, and it would just be to go outside once every 3 months or something like that, accomplish something hard and come down. Well, when I came home from my career, when I wouldn't have time with my boy, whether he's at school or with his mom, I started going out on longer, hikes into the mountains and bigger climbs and taller mountains. And it just got to the point where I found all of my numbers, like my doctor would say, your numbers are all improving. What are you doing? And to be honest with you, I wasn't watching my diet that much more, but I was exercising a ton.
Yeah.
And what I found with the mountains, obviously when you get to the top of a mountain, there's that feeling of accomplishment, but there's just a peace there. There's a quiet and solitude, and it's almost like meditation when you get to the top and you sit there and you're alone.
Yeah.
You don't, there's not even birds up there. I mean, you're just sitting at the top of this mountain. And I've also realized that, on the drive there, I may have some grievances, or I'm upset about somebody that did something or said something, or whatever, where I just carry some type of grudge. But by the time I would come down off the mountain, the endorphins kick in. All of a sudden, I'm not mad at anybody. I just want to hug everyone. I don't care about what people say about me or, politics or whatever. So it's been meditative as much as it's been a wellness journey for me, and maybe even a spiritual one, where whenever I do offer prayers for my loved ones, it's usually at the top of a mountain. So that's where it started, and that's kind of where it has evolved to. But certainly the pictures that you see on Facebook, I don't share them all. I only share a couple of the really good
They're
ones.
breathtaking.
They're breathtaking, but I wish you could see it in person, because it's probably 5 times better. It's just hard to replicate how beautiful it is. But yeah, I'm glad you're along for the ride on that journey. I try not to share too many pictures and videos because it can be a lot, because I do it all the time, and some of it can be repetitive.
I think they're all neat. That's just me. I really kind of connecting with seeing our world while we're here, because that to me is what's important, not constantly just running the hamster wheel.
Yeah, for sure. And part of it, when we think about our kids, and you talk about your kids, and obviously I'm very dedicated to my son. He's 15 now, and when he was 8 or 9, when me and his mom would ask him, "What do you want for your birthday? What do you want for Christmas?" He started at that age saying that he values experiences more than things. So what a gift for a parent to have a child that feels that way, especially if we instilled that into them, because it truly is, you can't take it with you, whether it's a cool car or a fun gadget, whatever. But for him to say he values experiences over things, when we ask him, "What do you want for your birthday?" that is a huge win for any parent.
Proud parent moment across the board.
Across the board, yeah. So hopefully that helped contribute to his mindset. I don't know what it is, but so very proud of him for having that mindset at such an early age, because I cannot say that I had the right perspective for a long time.
Yes, I actually have started to notice, because I do have younger kids, that they're quite insightful and they're quite smart about things. And they've taught me things that I was like, at your age, I was a hot mess, or not even in that headspace.
Yes, no question about it. Absolutely. Yes. At some point, the student becomes the teacher. And I think it happens at an earlier age for them, because there are a lot of times where my son will share something and I'm like, "Where did you even learn that?" And, I used to verify it. I would do some research to verify it. I don't verify it anymore. If he tells me something, I believe it. Their access to information is stunning, and they are very good at research.
Yes, absolutely. So how many mountains have you climbed?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. A lot.
You don't know? A lot.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh boy. Because some I do repeat, when I need to, get in shape for a really big mountain. Like I just did a really big mountain here last week. Like that one, I would climb the same mountain 3 or 4 times a week, just because I have a heavy backpack on, getting ready for a big expedition. So, but individual mountains, I would say it's got to be 50 to 60, maybe 70, something like that. But for how many times have I stood at the top of a mountain? A couple hundred.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot. Yeah.
That is a lot. That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. It's fun. It's a fun hobby. And, it's not a cheap one. People like, because I was a member at a golf course before that, and, you pay the huge fees, and, it just adds up. And when I resigned my membership, because I enjoyed being in the mountains more, people are like, "Well, I bet it's a lot cheaper than," I'm like, if you've seen the price tag on the equipment that you need in the mountains, it is not a cheap hobby. at all. Yes, you can go on the smaller ones without equipment, but to be safe and to actually enjoy the experience and make sure you've got what you need when you're there, it is not a cheap endeavor.
Yeah, and you need to be sure you're prepared, because I live by the Appalachian Trail.
Yes.
So
Okay.
to
Wow.
hike the entire trail, I live at the beginning. So to hike the entire thing, I think a girl told me on the cheap was $6,000. And this was a few years ago. And I said, $6,000. I'm never doing the AP.
Yeah. Well, don't say never.
Yeah.
I'm not committed to it now, but we'll see what happens. But by the way, so when I did go, so I went back, unfortunately I was back home for a funeral a couple of months ago. And I went out to Petenwell Rock, and I thought, I need to go check this out, because everybody that I know has climbed it at some point. And I'm like, I got to go and figure this out. So I went out there, and I'm like, I got to be careful, because, if I'm home for a funeral and I fall off, it's going to be a double whammy on the family, Yeah. So I went, but I finally got up there. It took me 6 minutes. I thought it was much more difficult than that, but I guess my experience of climbing the big mountains out here, changes perspective a little bit. Walk. But I finally did it. Yeah. But it was cool to be up there finally.
Yeah. Can I ask, because you mentioned your cousin was the one that fell off. I believe that's the one I remember hearing about, maybe. Did that make you fearful to climb at all ever? Or did you just kind of go, I'm still gonna do it because I want to?
Yeah. My cousin is Jamie Murphy, and he passed away about a month ago, 2 months ago. And it was always in the back of my mind that he had fallen. And I remember the shock wave that it sent through the family when he did. It's the game of telephone, especially back then, where you don't have social media, which some people say that makes it better, makes it worse.
All you have to do is go to a Necedah bar. I'm sure somebody was going to tell you that.
For sure. Always an easy place to get it. But I just remember wondering, is he okay? Is he going to be okay? And how bad was it? And I still don't have a full understanding of exactly how it happened, but it was enough to always stay with me, because that was 20, 30 years ago that he had fallen. And, for me, it was always a reminder of, be extra careful. And I'm always one of those people that I'm pretty risk averse now that I'm a father now anyway. But every time that I go into a sketchy place, literally, I would think about him and his fall and what it did to the family. And it helped me make better decisions. I don't always make the right ones, but I will say it helped me make better decisions.
Have you ever experienced a fall or had a dangerous situation happen to you in your climbing?
I have. So it was a little under 2 years ago. I went someplace called the Enchantments. And if folks look that up, it's a 20-mile end-to-end journey through the most beautiful mountains I've ever seen. It's up in the North Cascades, a little bit closer towards Canada. If you've seen the new Top Gun movie, Top Gun 2 Maverick, that's where they filmed a lot of the jet scenes in the wintertime because of all the tall mountains and all of that. So it was up there, and it's a very long story, but to try and cut it short, we had gone left where we should have gone right. It was my friend from Miami and I were going up, and we got cliffed out. There's no cell service up there. We got cliffed out, which means you can see the bottom. You just can't get there because you'd have to jump off a cliff to get there. So that was one of those situations where we overcommitted to the wrong path. We just thought, we're tough enough. We can figure it out. We'll make it to the bottom. We know we have to go down. Well, we got out over our skis a little bit, and now, this is one of those things where it goes a little bit between that spiritual, and I don't know how to describe it, but literally on the last mountain, because we had to stay there overnight. I had to make fire to keep myself warm. I had a leg injury. I mean, we were bumped and bruised, bleeding all over the place because we were making tough decisions to slide down rock faces because we know we have to get down, right? We can't get back up because of my leg injury, but that we slept overnight. I made a fire because it was raining. I was shivering. It was 30 something degrees and it was raining. That's the optimal way to get hypothermia. So I made a fire, stayed up all night to make sure that the fire didn't go out. The next morning we went out to one of the cliff faces, And I was sitting there thinking, well, if this is my final resting place, at least I got a good one, right? Because it's just beautiful mountains everywhere.
What a
And I took my,
positive thing to think.
well, you've got to keep your mind in it somehow and stay in the fight, somehow. But at some point, you also have to reserve yourself to saying, well, if this is where it's going to be, at least it's a beautiful run, right? So
Yeah.
I took my phone out to take a picture. I'm like, I don't think anyone's ever going to find my body here, but if they do, I want my family to know that this is where I'm resting. And I took out the phone to take a picture, and I had one bar with that one X on it. And I shook my head a little bit and squinted my head, and I'm like, sure enough. So I had the phone number saved for the ranger station, made a phone call. It went right through. And as soon as she answered, I was a freight train of information, my name, my location, because I did have an old school GPS. Excuse me. Gave the GPS location, our condition, where we're at, out of food, out of water, all this stuff. She goes, okay, it's recorded, slow down, tell me again. We had a 5-minute conversation. The phone never cracked once. There was no, it was like we were standing next to each other in the middle of the most Wi-Fi connected building in America. And she goes, how are you getting a cell phone signal? I said, I basically asked God to give me one chance to get out of here. She goes, there is zero cell signal up there. You know that. And I said, I didn't know that, but I guess
Sounds
now
like
I've got to live to do something right.
answered.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you've ever seen pictures, I have a tattoo on my left wrist, and it is actually the GPS location where I had to sit and make a fire to stay alive overnight. So, so that I could always remember that perspective, which is, I don't need fancy cars, fancy homes, cool stuff. I need the health and happiness of my family. I needed shelter. I need warmth. I need water. That's it. So that's why it's on my wrist, so that I see it whenever something is starting to, bother me or getting me frustrated. I'll go back to that simple equation. I need 4 things: health and happiness of friends, right? And family, shelter, heat, water. That's it.
Amazing. Amazing. So how can we get more people to hear that message without them having to be in a mountainous area, having to survive?
Yes. I don't want anybody to go where I went. That was a suffer fest. Let my example be the example you avoid. So that's the $1 million question, to be honest with you. And the fact that you ask it is evidence that you are tuned into knowing what is the meaning of life and how do you get out of it after getting the most from it. And I don't know. I think everybody has to hit not necessarily a bottom, but hit something that gives them a perspective that tells them not just what's important in life, but what is the most important thing, right? Because all kinds of things are important, but what's the most important thing? Health and happiness of your friends and your loved ones and your family. And when you really start, I don't know if it's maturity or you're getting older or life experiences or enough disappointments where you think, you know what, that really didn't matter, right? And wherever you get it, whether it's from books or podcasts or inspirational stories or memes on Facebook, find what's most important and really lean on that rather than the little things that you wish you had that you really don't need. But I don't know if you've got the equation for it. I want it because I want to be able to share it without having to sound like I'm standing on a soapbox, with my, experience in the mountains, because I'd rather give people a shortcut rather than go the long way that I got to get there, because it took me too long. That's one thing I'll say for sure.
Yeah. I'm hoping that this episode, maybe it'll be enough to hear like somebody is living and breathing from a small town in middle America in the 90s, doing the things. Let's talk about your most recent climb. I mean, let's face it, you and I are not young folks, right?
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself.
Well, let me just say, I don't think that I'm old, but I work in hospitality part-time, and those children that I work with love to tell me I'm elderly. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, my friends, my Facebook family, and my Necedah alum, they are doing these amazing things.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I don't know. There would be less kids walking around if they called me elderly. I'll tell you that. So yeah, well, that's funny. Yeah. So this, the climb I did this last, so people always ask me like, what's your goal? What do you want to do? And I tell them, for me, it's about exercise and meditation. That's why I do it. And it's occupying time and all that stuff. And like, well, what about this hike, last Memorial Day? And by the way, that one where I almost died, I went back the next year and conquered it solo. I'm just like, I need to go and make that wrong right. I need to take maps. I need to take everything I need to make sure I do it successful this time. Now I carry a satellite communicator, so no matter where I'm at in the world, I can get help if I need it. But that was
you
putting that one
from that and said, I'm going to do it again. You didn't let it stop you and say, I'm not going back to that particular mountain again.
Nope. Once my body healed, and last year, or the year that it happened, I couldn't do it anymore because the blizzards had set in. The mountains are just, they will kill you. You're not meant to be there in the wintertime. So I had to wait, but I had to heal my body anyway. So yeah, after that, I went in fully prepared and did the entire 20 miles in 10 and a half hours or something like that. But had to put that to bed, right? So after that, I did Mount St. Helens. Growing up, I remember being taught about that, and that, the ash circled the globe like 2 or 3 times. I was afraid of volcanoes. I thought volcanoes, piranha, and quicksand were going to be much bigger issues through my life than what they actually had.
The quicksand and the volcano. I remember the same
thing. Sure. Yes. So when I heard that you could actually climb to the top of that thing, I'm like, sure. So one of my friends reached out and said, hey, I got an extra permit. You want to do it? So I did it. And that, I think at the top, that's like 8,000 feet above sea level, something like that, maybe a little bit more. But it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. And everyone started to ask, well, what's next? Well, the most treacherous and challenging and difficult and highest point in the lower 48 is Mount Rainier. And about a month ago, I had seen an ad saying, hey, a spot just opened up. If you want to go up with an expedition team, various dates are available. And I looked into it and I'm like, you know what? This is a date that fits into my schedule. I didn't tell anybody about it. I guess I told a couple people because I had to train for it, right? Because it's 14,410 feet at the summit. And I committed to it internally, but I didn't want to put it out there so that if I didn't make it, whether it was from weather or physical limitations or whatever, I didn't want to set myself up for that failure, I guess. So I trained quietly for, about a month, but I mean, I've been climbing mountains for, a couple of years now. So it's pretty much acclimated to it. But on Friday of last week, June 30th at 6:07 in the morning, nobody in America in the lower 48 states stood at a higher point than I did. This little kid from Necedah stood at the highest point in lower 48. So that was a pretty cool moment. And, people have asked, what was it like? And the biggest thing that I remember from it is texting my loved ones the words, I did it. That's it. That's what hit me the hardest. It's what hits me. It still gets me emotional now to say I did it, because it's not a friendly environment at the top of those glaciers and those mountains. And to say that you did it, there's just a magical feeling that those 3 words give you whenever you send it to somebody that you care about, just to say, I did it.
Yes. Describe, if you can, what it's like to make that climb. Like, is it something that you do all at once? Is it in stages? What is it like? Are people dropping out as they go along? Like, how is that? What does that look like?
Yeah. So this particular expedition is a 2-day climb. Some people do it in 1 day, but you are gaining 9,000 feet in elevation. So, a mile is 5,280. So it's a little under 2 miles going up, but it's also about 20 miles round trip. So, I mean, it is a large venture of physical exhilaration and just discipline to get to the top. So you stop at the middle, you try and sleep. You can't. you're too excited. If you've not slept at 10,000 feet, it's different. Like my oxygen saturation was down at 90%, I think. So, 10% lower than what it normally is. And you get a headache, you get less appetite, you force yourself to eat because you need the energy to get up and go, because you burn, I think it's like 10,000 calories, on this. But the lower part of the mountain wasn't, harsh or anything. It was just beautiful. You're above everything. But that second half is something completely different. The face of the mountain, it's all glacier. Some of it you have to climb rock. Some of it's mixed, that you have to go through. But literally, you've got an ice axe, you've got harnesses around your waist, for climbing. You're roped in with other folks, and it's needed because about, I would say, 60 to 70% of that upper mountain, if you fall, and I did fall, and you slide down the mountain, it's almost certain death. Whether you go into a crevasse or you go off the edge of a cliff or whatever, it is a high stakes game for sure. And as you're getting higher, you've got less oxygen in your body. You get more confused and maybe a little bit dizzy and wobbly and nauseous. And it's beautiful, but people aren't meant to be there. And you are reminded, who is in charge. If the mountain decides you are not going to make it to the top that day, you are not going to make it to the top that day, whether it's, avalanches or weather, whiteout, strong winds. But yeah, people are dropping off pretty frequently. Our group had 17 to start. Only 10 of us made it up. And, in talking to the expedition team and the guides and the people that have been doing it for forever, they said, we've given up trying to predict who's going to make it and who's not, because there are two people. One was a really strong collegiate athlete that didn't make it up. And there was another guy that he looked like he was going to run circles around me. And there are two girls, one from San Francisco, one from Washington, D.C., that had just climbed a couple of 14,000, foot mountains. And I thought they were the first two to drop out, and they were in extraordinary shape. So, you just don't know what's going to get somebody to the top. I started getting the feeling of frostbite, being from Wisconsin. We know what that feels like, right? Whether it's the bus stop or you're ice fishing or out hunting, you know that feeling.
And getting cold, it affects you faster if you've had it.
It affects you a lot faster. Yeah. So when I think it was about the last 3 hours that I had that feeling in my toes that I might be getting frostbite. And I started doing these exercises where you curl your toes with every step. Well, when you do that, then my calf started to cramp, so the last 2 hours I was in pain, but I wasn't going to stop. It's thinking back to, my school and getting back in, and I'm not going to not finish this time. And all those things, unless physically or the mountain just decides I'm not going to make it to the top, none of us going to make it up to the top, I'm going to get there. And it was a little bit worrisome because my toes did get a little bit frosty and my fingers got a little bit cold, but I made a decision that I'm not going to stop unless I absolutely have to save, a toe or a finger or whatever. It was really difficult, but I made it.
Yay.
Yeah.
At any time when you're doing that, does your brain try to take over into that automatic, I'm going to try to keep you safe response, give you anxiety that you have to fight through? Do you have that problem? Did you ever experience that?
Nope. Nope. That's a really good question. So my mind and my body and my instincts have always had it, from being situationally aware to, staying calm in tragic situations like the Las Vegas shooting. I was there that night. Oh, wow. And, stayed calm and, led people down the right path, as far as, an exit route to safety. So I've always had that. And, on the mountain, none of that really kicked in. You do have to train for it, and you have to, do things with your breathing, and, you have to be mindful of when you're changing directions, which hand you keep your ice axe in. There are so many things you have to do. Your mind is always working. But I'll tell you, from the discipline standpoint, if you've ever had those dreams where you either have to run or you have to fight, and everything is in slow motion and you've got no strength, you've got no power, that's the feeling those last couple thousand feet when you get up to 14,000. your feet have to go one step in front of the other to go up. And at the beginning, you're like, okay, I'm going to go a mile, then I'm going to take a little rest. Here it was take 5 steps, stop, rest, do pressure breathing. And it was 3 steps, stop,
Wow.
rest, pressure breath. And it, some was a 1. So it was just one of those things where, for people that overcome and climb a mountain, and whether that mountain is physical or spiritual, emotional, career related, whatever mountain it is that you're climbing, you take it a mile at a time, or you take it 10 steps at a time, or you take it 1 step at a time, but you just have to keep moving forward, whether it's a mountain or it's something you have to get over, personally from your childhood, or an existing issue, whether it's relationship, career, whatever. Just keep moving forward. And I think that's the discipline that helped me make it to the top of that mountain and a couple of other mountains, because you can't do it on autopilot. You really have to tighten up your bootstraps and keep your feet moving forward 1 step at a time.
I love that. That's perfect. That is perfect. And that says it all right there. So as a Gen X person, do you have any advice for Gen Z? Because we looked to people to guide us, to give us advice, to figure it out as we were growing up. So here comes Gen Z. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the same type of advice that I give to my son, whether it's in sports or what he's going to do in his career, or whatever he's doing. You're going to get further with good people around you. Be a good communicator, be a respectful communicator, be a team player, because 2 minds is better than 1. 3 is better than 2. Work with the people around you, learn every opportunity that you get, and just be humble. You will never know it all.
Yeah.
The more that you know, the less you'll think that you know, and the more your hunger will grow to learn more. And I think that it can apply to any generation, because with the millennials and the Gen Zs, they have an extraordinary amount of information at their fingertips, and they are really, really good at finding it. They're the best data miners, in my opinion, by generation.
I agree.
But they're not always disciplined in putting it together and telling a story, or being proficient at using it to make better decisions. And when you include more people, especially people that inspire you or make you smarter, you will be able to do more with the information that you're getting than if you don't have others to bounce it off of. That's where a lot of our best ideas come from, is having a conversation. You learn from the right people that are around you. And just like in this conversation, every conversation they will have, I think, is going to help them get there. But they were going to find their own path. They're going to learn it at their own pace, because one thing I've learned, especially teaching and coaching my son in sports, is that he is not always going to listen to his dad. He's going to listen to the people he wants to listen to.
Yes.
And eventually he will understand, I hope at some point, that he will circle back to, like we all did, that there are certain parental figures and aunts and uncles and elders from our lives that we should have been listening to all along, that just wasn't as fun.
Yes.
When we were being told, pick up your room. That hopefully he'll bounce around to that. And he started to a little bit, but a lot of kids, look to others first, because they're so used to us, giving them things to do rather than things to learn.
Yeah.
Hopefully they come back on us.
And I feel that they will, because I know from my parental journey, my kids have shocked me sometimes. I think that I'm talking to a brick wall, and then I hear them say to one of their peers something that I taught them, and I'm like,
yeah, exactly. Yep. They're sponges, but they usually absorb the wrong thing. Yes. So when they bring out something that you're proud that they remembered, it's a little bit of a surprise the first few times it happens.
Yes, I agreed. What does the future hold for you, Brian?
Boy, I hope a lot more health and happiness, not just for, my loved ones, but hopefully for me too. My goal in life is to be balanced, and balance between, physical happiness, emotional happiness, and just helping my son learn the things that I wish I had been taught at an earlier age. And, and he tells me, I appreciate, he goes, I really do appreciate what you teach me. It's not always fun in the moment, but I do appreciate it. And I hope that's true of not just him, but the people that I still mentor, people across the country that we work together. They were in a formal mentorship program, or they're just, young tribal people, because I'm a tribal member of, tribal Wisconsin. And, I try to help give them those same teachings that I didn't have, when I was young and going up, and it was the guy with the potential that wasn't, met yet. And I hope I can make a difference that way, because I think, with the time that we've got here, that's the way that you make the biggest difference, is helping other people believe in themselves because you believe in them, and you make their lives a little bit easier because you've helped give them a shortcut that you didn't have. And I hope that I'm able to do that, and maybe inspire a person or two along the way that says, just because you're from a small town or you had humble beginnings, because that's what I had, that's us, doesn't mean you can't make it to the fun parties, right? If you're good to people, and you're someone that shows up with energy and enthusiasm, that you'll get invited to some of those cool opportunities, like we have. And hopefully I'm an example of that will someday inspire somebody to say, you know what, just because I'm from a small town or I have humble beginnings doesn't mean I can't go, do the cool things that I see other people doing on Instagram, because Instagram is a facade. It's just a highlight reel.
Yes.
People just post the cool stuff out there. We all have our own journey and we all have our own dramas. But it's fun to look at the other, highlight reels to see, what's out there, not to compare ourselves to other people, but just to see what's out there. And that's part of the reason I share most of the things that I do, is to show if this could happen to me, it can happen to you.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. And to me, it doesn't have to be perfect. Imperfect can be exactly what it needs to be to fill you up, So do you have any final thoughts that you want to share?
No final thoughts. You asked a lot of great questions. It was fun catching up with you, and I hope I brought some value and enough of an interesting, way to tell the stories of the life that I lived so far to be of some value. But it was a lot of fun, and happy to do it, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do it again.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian, for your time and sharing your amazing stories with us, and your insightful words of encouragement to just keep moving forward. And when you have your back up against a wall of a mountain and there's no cell service, maybe just giving it up.
Absolutely. No question. Yeah, no, this has been truly my pleasure. And it was a fun conversation. Yeah. And hopefully it comes out across that way, because it was fun for me.
It was fun for me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending time listening to our conversation. If you enjoyed this and other episodes, please subscribe, like, and share so we can reach more listeners with our powerful messages. And stay tuned to hear about our affiliates and recommendations. They change from episode to episode.